This is Nobara Kugisaki, one of the most confident people in Jujutsu Kaisen. She is extremely prideful, has an unshakable character, and above all else, she's kinda crazy. According to Gojo Satoru, to be a Jujutsu sorcerer requires you to be virtually insane, and Nobara was quote, plenty crazy. During a fight with a special grade level enemy, in order to gain the upper hand in the fight, Nobara willingly and with no hesitation stabbed herself with nails. And instead of grimacing in pain, because she was able to outwit her opponent, she literally smiled at him. Even after the fight, when her classmate Yuji lamented over the fact that they had ended the curse's lives, Nobara was unfazed, saying that she had expected this when becoming a Jujutsu sorcerer. Nobara was very aware of who she was and prideful of that fact, to the point where above all else, she cared about staying true to herself. And even as a child, she held and very much acted on this belief. As a young kid, Nobara was raised in a small countryside village where everyone in the village knew each other, to the point where it was harder to be strangers than to be friends. This unnerving closeness bothered Nobara, and she believed that she was the only sane person in a village of weirdos. Because of this, the only people that Nobara liked interacting with were people that came from outside her village. An example of this was when Nobara met Fumi. Fumi had just moved into the village, but Nobara instantly created a relationship with her, almost as if she was adopting her. Just in their first few interactions, Nobara traded backpacks with Fumi, beat up two boys that were bullying her, and even went over to Fumi's house every day to play Super Smash. However, Fumi wasn't the only friend that Nobara made, as Nobara also found Saori. While Fumi was more like a classmate and friend to Nobara, Saori was more like an older sister. Nobara started to idolize Saori so much that she started copying her mannerisms, and Nobara respected Saori and cherished the time she spent with her. However, unfortunately for both Nobara and Saori, many of the villagers started to dislike Saori and her family and would constantly harass them. At one point, some villagers were piling snow in front of the entrance to Saori's house and even graffitiing her house with nasty messages. Because of this, Saori and her family were forced to move out of the village, and this devastated Nobara to the point where she sobbed uncontrollably. To Nobara, Saori's forced removal made her realize that if she stayed in the village, she would be unable to stay true to herself and would eventually lose her self-identity. Because of this, Nobara decided to attend Jujutsu High to be able to escape her village and go to Tokyo. And even though becoming a Jujutsu sorcerer would be very dangerous, Nobara saw the risks and decided it was worth it if it meant she wouldn't have to compromise on her beliefs. As she headed to Tokyo, Nobara said goodbye to Fumi and hoped to meet both her and Saori one day in Tokyo. However, while Nobara was unable to see her two childhood friends, in Jujutsu High she was able to make new close friendships. Now for Nobara, she wasn't someone that made or had a lot of close friends. Nobara's personality is one where she knew what she wanted, and she neither wanted or had space in her life for many friends. However, surprisingly, in her time in Jujutsu High, she was able to make friends with both her classmates and seniors, and one of these friends was Maki. Maki Zenin was Nobara's senior in Jujutsu High and someone that was pretty similar to Nobara. Maki was brazen, tough as nails, and like Nobara, would not let someone get in the way of something she wanted.
This is my destiny.
For most of her life, Maki was actually oppressed by her family, and that was because of her lack of cursed energy. Maki was born with such low cursed energy that for her to fight and even seek her spirit, she would have to completely rely on cursed tools. However, this didn't mean that Maki was weak, as she was battle tested, and her lack of cursed energy actually gave her a significant boost to her physical abilities. However, Maki's family refused to see her strengths, and because of her lack of cursed energy, saw her as weak. This was because Maki's family was the Zenin family, which was a prestigious Jujutsu family with twisted values. The Zenin family above all else valued strong Jujutsu and techniques. Family members that had a strong technique were given privileges and positions of power, while members with weaker techniques were made to serve or were even ostracized. Because of this, Maki was constantly mistreated by her family, but she didn't take this mistreatment lying down. Maki decided to leave her family. It made it her goal to get strong enough to one day become the Zenin family head to piss off everyone that had mistreated her. However, her family in response to this oppressed her and made it impossible for Maki to ever promote beyond a grade 4 sorcerer. Regardless of this, Maki continued to push forward, determined to one day reach her goal, and this resolve resonated with Nobara. Nobara absolutely loved the way that Maki carried herself and appreciated it that Maki, even though she had gone through such a tough situation, had stayed strong in her resolve. Nobara didn't believe a difficult situation constituted a good reason to go against her own morals and beliefs, and she tended to gravitate toward people that had similar strong wills, which was how she became friends with Yuji and Megumi. Funnily enough, when Nobara first met Megumi and Yuji, she actually thought very little of them. For Yuji, she literally called him a quote booger-eating kid and said that Megumi probably lit seagulls on fire for fun. However, it didn't take long for Nobara to warm up to them, as Nobara and Yuji's sense of humor was similar and they both loved annoying Megumi. As the group spent more time together and went on multiple life-threatening missions, they became even closer, with Nobara even fighting alongside Yuji multiple times. During a mission to retrieve one of Sukuna's fingers, Nobara and Yuji ended up running across two special grade curses in Eso and Kechisu. Eso and Kechisu were unique in the fact that they had been created by combining blood from a cursed spirit and a human. Because of the unique way they were created, both Eso and Kechisu considered each other brothers, and both their blood and curse techniques were connected. If one of them managed to put their blood in someone, either of them could activate their technique and the target would start to decay, which is exactly what happened to both Nobara and Yuki. While Yuki and Nobara were fighting the brothers, Kechisu managed to surprise attack them and hit them both with his blood. This allowed Eso to activate his decay technique, which started to harm Nobara and Yuki at an alarming rate. Initially, it looked like both of them were done for, but Nobara had other plans. When Eso activated his decay technique, Nobara managed to stay calm and think quickly on her feet, immediately noticing that her resonance technique was a perfect counter to the brothers. Nobara's resonance allowed her to establish a link between her and a set target, and Nobara could then use cursed energy through that link in order to harm her target. The only condition was that Nobara would have to create the link using something from the target such as a body part, but in this case, because of the nature of the brothers' decay technique, she could use their blood to establish the link. With no hesitation, Nobara stabbed herself with her nail to activate resonance and hurt both the brothers to the point where they couldn't even move. And Nobara at this point even smiled maniacally and declared the game a chicken. As long as the decay technique was active, Nobara would be able to continually use resonance against them, and like a madman she did. Every time Nobara activated resonance, she would have to stab herself with nails, and she did so willingly and almost seemed to find pleasure in doing so. This was not because she was a masochist, but because the amount of joy she found in outsmarting and defeating her opponents outweighed the pain. Her use of resonance would freeze the brothers in pain, and Yuji during these moments would take the opportunity to beat on Kechisu. Because of this, Eso was forced to deactivate his technique to try to save Kechisu, but in that instance, both Nobara and Yuji attacked. Because of the pain that Nobara had experienced, her focus had been increased to the point where she was able to land a black flash on Kechisu, severely injuring him. And Nobara was not done yet, because when Kechisu attempted a last-ditch attack, Nobara used another one of her techniques, Hairpin, to mercilessly execute Kechisu. Soon after, Yuji and Nobara went on to defeat Eso, but after they left the battle, the two of them had very different outlooks on the fight. Yuji left the fight feeling guilt-ridden over killing the brothers, but Nobara was unfazed, seeing it as just a part of her duties as a Jujutsu sorcerer. While Nobara didn't completely dismiss Yuji's feelings, she saw the situation as inevitability and had pride in the fact that she had defeated the brothers. To Nobara, her being strong was a big part of her identity and she took pride in her strength. However, her strength was soon tested. During the Shibuya arc, Nobara had been one of the many people in Shibuya when Gojo was sealed. Initially, Nobara ran into a lot of trouble as enemies that she faced outsmarted her and left her looking unlike her usual self. At one point, she was even told to hang back from the fighting as the threats in Shibuya were deemed too strong for her. Annoyed by her failures and unable to hang back while the rest of her friends were fighting, Nobara disobeyed orders and went into the battlefield only to come across Maito. At this point, Nobara had heard about Maito and his powers from other Jujutsu sorcerers, so she knew the basics on how to fight him. And Maito was mainly dangerous due to two things. One was that if he touched a human, he could transfigure and completely destroy them, and the other was that he was not affected by physical attacks, but only attacks to the soul. Fortunately for Nobara, her technique resonance could actually hurt souls, and she used it to her advantage, catching Maito off guard and blasted him with her resonance. And when Nobara used resonance, she also realized that the Maito she was fighting was actually a clone and was weaker than the original. Maito's clone, looking at the situation, realized he was in a bad spot and took off, which caused Nobara to chase after him. However, this was the worst mistake she could make.
悪くなかった。
When Nobara finally caught up to Maito, she saw that the original Maito had actually been fighting with Yuji, and when Nobara saw Yuji, she was surprised. However, in the instance that she was surprised, Maito ran up on her and touched her face. As this happened, Nobara's life flashed before her eyes and she saw all the people in life that were important to her, and she even saw Fumi again and apologized that she couldn't meet with her one more time. As Nobara dealt with all this, she turned to Yuji and smiled, telling him to tell everyone that her life wasn't so bad. As she said this, Maito's technique exploded off half her face and she was presumed dead. For Nobara, while death was not something that she looked forward to, because she was able to live her life the way she wanted, she didn't see her life as a bad one, and she was fine with passing away. However, surprisingly, Nobara was not actually dead. When Nobara had her face exploded, she was somewhat able to survive because another sorcerer named Nita happened to be around. Nita's technique was a unique one where it would stop any active wounds from getting worse. While his technique couldn't heal wounds or stop new ones, he could stop Nobara from getting worse almost as if he was putting her in stasis. Because of this, Nita was able to keep Nobara alive and get her to someone that could hopefully heal her. And surprisingly, someone was actually able to heal her. Much later on, when the entire Jujutsu world was fighting to stop Sukuna, Nobara was able to make a full recovery and while rocking a sick eye patch, was ready to contribute to the fight. And she did so by landing a critical blow on Sukuna. Earlier on, Yuta had secured one of Sukuna's fingers and had given it to Jujutsu Sorceress as a backup plan. Because Nobara was able to recover, she was able to use Sukuna's finger as a link and cast Resonance on him, critically wounding him. Because of this, Yuji was able to beat down Sukuna and finally defeat him, freeing Megumi from Sukuna's control and basically saving the world. Nobara is pretty clutch.
じゃんけんぽん。